Hi, this is Eric Samuelson from Eat Like No One Else, and you are listening to the Eat Blog Talk podcast.
Hey, awesome food bloggers. Before we dig into this episode, I have a really quick favor to ask you. Go to your favorite podcast player, go to Eat Blog Talk, scroll down to the bottom where you see the ratings and review section. Leave Eat Blog Talk a 5-star rating if you love this podcast, and leave a great review. This will only benefit this podcast. It adds value. And I so very much appreciate your efforts with this. Thank you so much for doing this. Okay, now on to the episode. Hey, food bloggers. Welcome to Eat Blog Talk, the podcast for food bloggers looking for the value and confidence that will move the needle forward in their businesses. This episode is sponsored by Rank IQ. I'm your host, Megan Porta, and you are listening to episode number 346. Today, I have Eric Samuelson with me. He is going to talk to us about how to rank for non-recipe content and why that content is so valuable. Eric has been blogging at Eat Like No One Else since 2009, before there was anything out there like Eat Blog Talk or a food blogging community. Eric considers his blog to be a teaching blog. Eat Like No One Else is the place to learn how to enhance the way you eat through learning of specialty foods and ingredients and how to make the most amazing food at home. He solidly believes in the if you teach a man to fish philosophy. Eric, I am so glad that after 300 plus episodes, you're finally coming on to Eat Blog Talk. We've known each other for a few years. It's such a pleasure to have you here today. How are you doing?
Thank you, Megan. Yeah, it's a pleasure to sit down and get to chat with you and be in your podcast. So excited about it.
Yay, me too. Okay, we want to hear your fun fact if you have one to share with us before we get to the topic.
Sure. So my fun fact here, and this kind of relates to our lifestyle, so a quick little snippet of it. Me and my family travel full-time in our camper. So we travel all over the country since September 2020. And something that we do, especially me and my oldest daughter, is we like to go out bird watching and identify different species of birds. And as of right now, we have taken photos and kind of categorized 245 different species.
I didn't know this about you. That is the coolest thing ever. Okay, what is the rarest bird that you've seen?
I say it's kind of a tie, sort of, because we saw the California condor in Zion National Park in Utah, which is like extremely endangered, and they just kind of reintroduced them. Like when I was a kid, there was like 23 of them left in the whole world.
What?
So we saw that. And then we once saw a rosette spoonbill in New York. And like that is a Florida type of southern bird, and like somehow made it up in New York. And we like saw it at this wildlife refuge. We took a picture of it, shared it on Facebook, and within 2 hours, that refuge was like jammed with traffic. Like all these bird people started showing up to see this like bird that had never been seen in New York before. So it was kind of cool.
So what do you call a bird watcher who's like really into it? Like a bird fanatic, a birdie? Do you have a name for that?
Birdie. My daughter goes with bird nerds. She calls us bird nerds.
Bird nerds. That's perfect. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Bird nerds. I love birds. So the rarest thing, and it's probably not super rare, but I occasionally see in our yard those like big blue jays, like with the just stately heads. Like they're so big.
Yeah.
I've seen like maybe 3 times over the past 6 years, they'll just like land on our railing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Do you guys see blue jays often?
We do. They're only more in the eastern part of the country. We didn't see them when we were out west for like months and months. It was like a common bird for us, like me growing up. So it was like, oh, they're there again. We haven't seen them in a long time.
They're so pretty, aren't they? Oh, awesome. Okay, now I know that I can talk birds with you now that I know you're a bird nerd. All right, Eric, you have an amazing journey. Your blog is one of the older blogs, and I'm not like being rude because mine is old too, but in a good way. You have stuck with it through thick and thin. Your blog has weathered many storms. We've had a lot along the way, right? So I think it would be really valuable to start out with you just sharing a little bit about your journey, like why you got started, maybe share with us some ups and downs, and then where you're at now.
I originally got started, I was thinking this idea back in 2009. At that point, I had one kid. We have four now. She was, at that point, a toddler. She was toddler age, under 2, when I kind of started doing. At the time, I was a stay-at-home dad. My wife worked, so I was at home with her. So kind of looking for other ways to make income. I saw people like making money off websites. Oh, that's kind of cool. That'd be kind of a thing to do. I eventually decided to try it out for myself and see if I could do that. So I always loved food, like very interested in like grocery shop. Like I loved grocery shopping as a kid. I always grew up like that was like my favorite time of the week when we went on Mondays to go grocery shopping and just find like the new things in the store and stuff. So I wanted to kind of like share that knowledge. So when I originally started the blog, I had like a 3-prong kind of like focus. It was like at the store, in the kitchen, in the garden. The garden stuff I eventually did for a little bit while and then kind of like cut that completely out of the blog because it did not generate any traffic or hardly any traffic. So it was like, well, I'm not getting anything for this here. I'm going to shift my focus to be on those two things. So for a while, I was partially a gardening blog until I realized that wasn't really working. I was lucky doing at the beginning because at that time period, there wasn't like there was no communities for food bloggers. So it was a lot of just kind of learning things on your own. And I had someone luckily point out to me at the beginning that, hey, you should put Google Analytics in your website. I'm like, what the heck is Google Analytics? I had no clue what that was at the time. No clue. So luckily I had that on my site from the very beginning. So I was able to, I got into tracking page views and stats and stuff here. It used to be more powerful. Back in the day, it used to tell you every single keyword that people came in from it. And it stopped doing that over the years. So like it was really helpful to know like what people were searching for and that. So like early on in the first year, I was already like trying to generate content that would be what people were looking for. I could already kind of get an idea around that. And so that's changed and shift like over time. So I did it for many years, got into getting some advertisement up there. Really, really just not high paying advertising at all. Just like it was so bad. It was using like info links. It was the thing where they put like double underlines under your links here. I mean, it looked kind of terrible, but I was like trying to, I'm like, I want to make some money off this thing here. So I used that way back in the day. Things that didn't, that was not paying much. I did Google AdSense a little bit until I got kicked off it because my mother-in-law like clicked too many things for me. Oh. I ended up getting kicked off for click fraud in the first month of my blog. So that was
oh, that's funny. Oh, your mother-in-law trying to help and she got you kicked out. Did you ever do Food Buzz?
No, I didn't do that one. I did gourmet ads. I had that one.
Oh, yeah.
And the other one was, it changed names a couple times, like Sovereign, I think it was what it was called at one point. I think it went through a couple different names. So I had a couple of things that I was doing in the beginning. And Amazon affiliate. Like I did Amazon affiliate programs since the very beginning. Like I got early onto doing that. So those were like the original phases. So
yeah. And then where has it evolved to now? Now it's, generating some income and you've got better traffic. So where are you at now?
So the biggest change was I was working full time for a long time. Like my wife, then she lost her job. I went to work then. I was working most of that time. I was working for Whole Foods. So I was still in my like space and I was still like in food all the time and like, learning about the grocery side of things here and being able to like share my like I was like this. Everyone at the store, like all my coworkers, went to me anytime a customer had a question they couldn't answer because I always had the answer pretty much all the time.
Nice.
But what I was doing, I was trying to build the blog while doing that at the same time, which was very challenging because I had a schedule that was different every week almost. So it was hard to like be consistent, like get like a consistency going, which I think is really important. So I kind of struggle along with that for a while, and eventually I wasn't really like involved with like communities or that, but I had found someone who had shared what they were earning, their stats, how much they were earning. And I'm like, oh, what is this Mediavine thing? Like what's that? Like I never had heard of it before, and it looked like, well, she's earning like a ton of money off this, and like I looked at her traffic numbers, I'm like, they're kind of similar, like, and she's earning this much money, like what the heck? So I was motivated to then try to like apply for Mediavine. And honestly, I was actually really nervous about it because I remember like applying for it. They're like, you need to be in good standing with Google. And I'm going back to like, oh my gosh, back in 2009 when my mother-in-law got me kicked off. Is that going to disqualify me from Mediavine? So I'm like super nervous about like, is this actually going to work out or not? Am I going to get into this program? Is this going to work? And at that point I had like well beyond like the page view numbers that they had required. I mean, even more. I mean, back then I think it was 25,000 page views. I mean, they've upped it now. I think it's like 75 now or that. But I was already way beyond that, so I totally qualified for it. So I'm like probably getting nervous for nothing. Then I got into the program, and at that point, I like immediately went to full time earnings. Like I was earning more right away than I was from my other advertising that wasn't working. So I was able to, at that point, I was ready to transition out of my job because I was just burnt out. Like I was constantly burnt out. I had gone through some health problems and just like, it was just not like working for our family. It was like, I need to do something different. So I took the leap a little bit probably before most people probably would. It was like, I need to do something, like something had to change.
Good for you for just seeing that you needed to do that and it wasn't good for your mental and physical state and just making that change. That's the hardest part, I feel like, is taking that leap because we all know we need to do it when the time comes, but then actually doing it is super, super hard. So now here you are, like how many years later? What is that? 2009?
Yeah, so it was 2009 when I started. So this would be 2017 is when I got onto Mediavine. And actually our youngest daughter, Shaylee, who's 4 now, she was born in 2018. So I was full-time by the time she was born. So for me, it was kind of significant to do that then because it was like she never had to experience daddy being gone at work like the other kids did. So that was really nice.
Yeah.
So she never got to, that kind of ended with her. So when I went full-time, my wife was pregnant too.
Oh, wow.
So I had to do that.
So you jumped in. Yeah. Yep.
So.
And then how do you feel like your blog has been since then? So since you got into Mediavine and you're just full-time, how has it been going?
For a couple of years, we were still growing pretty well. There wasn't like, for me at the time period, I was still living a lot for the first couple of years, living a lot on the Q4 income. Because my income would incredibly increase. So I would make enough, but some of the other months we would kind of like fall short on like what we needed for like our budget and stuff here. So I would pull from savings what I got from Q4 to pay that. So that was kind of the way it was going for the first couple of years. There would be some months where I'm like, well, I'm making enough where I'm making more than enough to get by, and then some months I wasn't. So I had to, work with that. And then that kind of like ended with the pandemic. Like when the pandemic hit and the traffic went up and stayed there, and then I was like always like every month it was like, okay, I have enough and plus to save every month. So like the pandemic was like the next kind of like, I don't know, breakout point. I mean, for something good to happen among something absolutely horrible, it was very great for us in that time period to really just feel really blessed by that, and all the hard work we had put in over the years on the blog, like really came to like say like fruition then, because I was able to, I wasn't at that point still working in a store where I'd be in the public all the time, and it wouldn't have to like for us, it didn't really, affected us still, of course, but it didn't affect us the way like other people got really hurt by it. So we were like perfectly set up for like all the stay-at-home orders and everything that had happened.
Yeah, right.
And then remember that Easter, I had like the Easter 2020, I had like the best day on my blog I'd ever had. Like just was ridiculous numbers coming in because like everyone was cooking their own food for the meal that day, and it was just like it was like absolutely insane numbers. Like sitting back, like watching like most of the time I don't look at my real time on my Google Analytics. But that day, like I had the real time kind of like up on my phone all the time, just kind of seeing like, oh my gosh, how high could this possibly go? And it was like in the hundreds and hundreds. It was like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous.
Oh, I love that. That's the best feeling, to see like hundreds of people on your blog at the same time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, anything else about your journey since? So the pandemic was good, as it was for a lot of us. How did it go after that? Yeah,
things went really well. Like I said, I broke my record in Easter, but then I broke the record again for my daily on Thanksgiving Day that same year. So we had a really like crazy like holiday season that year. It was just like numbers were just like absolutely insane, and just helped us like build our like savings up a lot. So it was really fun. Since then, things have slowed down. I think all probably bloggers have seen like a slowdown since that time period when people, it's good. People are all back doing stuff again. I wouldn't want that to continue, of course. So it's now kind of like the adjustment period and trying to say, okay, we're not running that high anymore. So now it's trying to find like what's the next way, what's the next thing to kind of. It'd be nice to get back to where we were at that point. So we're just kind of working through that now in the blog. So.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that. I love your journey. And I feel like any blogging journey that's that long has a story. And you've had plenty of stories and themes. And you have this theme of being the go-to foodie. I love that was the case when you worked at Whole Foods. And now that's kind of where you are now. And that's kind of what we're talking about. Because you have started putting an emphasis more on non-recipe content, which I think is so smart in today's blogging world. So can you talk to us about that? Like when you decided to do that and how that has gone for your blog and maybe why you think it's a good idea?
Yeah. So really from the very get-go, like I always had non-recipe like content. Besides, I said I did the gardening thing and stuff, right? I had that shopping kind of aspect of my blog. So I always like have had that as part of my whole like game plan. And I've always kind of mixed it up. I'll put recipes in, but if you look at my top 100 posts, like maybe 10 of them are recipes, and the other 90 or so are more non-recipe, or if their recipes are more like along the lines of more of like I'm teaching you like like how to cook a ham in the Instant Pot.
Yeah,
But that was my viral post on Easter.
Oh, nice.
So more of like a lot of the recipes that do rank well are more like explaining like concepts, like how to usually it's with different things like the air fryer, or like let's see, my third best post the last week or so has been how to cook a bottom run roast. So it's like a really cheap cut of beef that you need to cook well, otherwise it's going to be horribly tough. So that post kind of goes on like instructions, but it still has like a recipe card and there's a recipe for it too. But I base that one on more how to cook it as opposed to just like the recipe. So it's more on like give people different ideas of like, oh, here's a recipe you can follow, but here are other ways you can cook this. So that's kind of how I approach those kind of things. So.
Yeah. So you really were kind of writing that way anyway. And then when you started analyzing your content, you were like, oh, I'm ranking for all of this really non-recipe content because that's where your expertise lies and that's what you're interested in. So at that point, did you start doing more of it, trying to beef up your content with that?
Yes. Yeah, definitely started looking on what's ranked well. Like I saw like, okay, like I'm doing well for this type of, for this cut of beef here. So let's write more posts. So I try to cover like any cut of beef. I can come along and say, how do you cook this one? How do you cook this other one? How to cook a flat iron steak? How to do a eye of round roast? All the different. Because and plus, like for me originally too, part of my motivation was like, I don't understand all these beef cuts. I mean, you go in the store and there's like all these different like names for beef and there's weird words on it sometimes, and you're kind of wondering like, what the heck does that mean? I mean, it's not like chicken. It's pretty straightforward. You got breast, you got thigh. You got your drumsticks, you got, skin on or bone in or type things, but you don't have like, there's not that many like choices. In beef, there's like ridiculous amounts of choices, and they're coming up with new ones. They're finding like different ways to like the flat iron steak is a newer one that they like found a different way to cut up the cow, and they produce like, oh, here's a different type of steak. So it's kind of crazy that they're still discovering like cuts of, you would think that would be something that would already be like established, but like they're still doing that. So I personally didn't understand all that. So I'm like, okay, well, if I don't understand it, then it's likely that other people don't understand it either. So I want to provide that information. I want to learn it myself and then share it with other people.
And it's valuable because people search that stuff. They, like you just said, there's so many different cuts of beef. Most people don't know that. So we go to Google, right? And we type that in, and your goal is to be on the front page so people click. And creating those non-recipe posts, I have found, is so easy compared to creating recipe posts. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. For sure. I mean, if you're not doing, you're not making a recipe, so that's a whole time that's gone. If you're practice, if you're cooking it multiple times and testing and stuff here, that takes time, and then photographing it. And I think too, I would say there's like a higher standard for photographs for like recipe posts. You want it to look like really good here. And like, so a lot of my like non-recipe content is like I'll take a picture at a farmer's market or a grocery store, or just like, I'll have a product that is, all I have to do is like throw it, put it on a background here and take some photos of it. So, and oftentimes I'm just doing that with my phone. I'm not even like getting a camera. I'm just like grabbing my phone.
Right.
And I got like I don't have an iPhone or anything like that, but I have a Motorola phone that was like that had, I looked up and found one that had the best ratings on it for photos for a decent price. That's the phone I use for most things.
So what other non-recipe content would you recommend if people want to dig into something like this? Are there other types of non-recipe posts to consider?
Oh, yeah. One of the things I've done really well with is what I would call like a comparison post, where I'm comparing two different but similar things. So, for example, for St. Patrick's Day, I do really well with a post on brisket. So it's comparing flat cut brisket to point cut brisket. So two different types of brisket, or two different areas of the whole brisket. And so the post is all about trying to figure out which is better for corned beef, which do you like better, depending on your taste too. So like those posts do really well. And I've done tons of different comparisons after seeing how that one did well. So I'll do like comparing like what's the difference between Colby cheese and cheddar cheese, or wildflower honey and clover honey, or different types of pears and apples. So like people seem to really like those ones. They seem to rank really well because people are just looking for that information because they're wondering like, oh, I have a recipe. Which should I use for this recipe? So it really, I think those end up doing really well. So I read a lot of those type of posts.
Awesome. And then you mentioned like the ham, like a how-to style, which I think is really valuable for so many different types of food, not just meat, but all kinds of things. What else? I know you do some like where to buy this ingredient type of posts. Talk through those.
Yes. Since I love grocery shopping, and from my travels, I've been to pretty much every major grocery chain in this country. So it gives me a good knowledge of where to find things. And I think like people are trying to find out, like they have some ingredients that they can't find. They want like, oh, how do I find this out? Like recently I did one on Macintosh apples. So like that type of apple is grown more in the north, and it's kind of hard to find when you live, like if someone has moved down south, like Texas. I had someone who was in Texas and couldn't find them anymore. So kind of knowing that, having a blog post say, oh, there actually is a store in Texas I know that carries this apple. So I kind of do some of those posts where I'm explaining, here's some places you can look. Here's some ideas of stores you can look to find certain things. And those seem to do pretty well too. So I'm using the knowledge I have from being around places to find it out. And often now, actually, it's become easier for me in recent years with the rise of like Instacart and other type of services, because now you can actually like look up that information. You can, website here. So like sometimes if I'm trying to like compile a list like that, I'll go through and I'll type in like, as I know so many stores, I'll be like, okay, Hy-Vee. I don't know if Hy-Vee carries this here. So I'll type Hy-Vee and whatever product or thing I'm looking up here, and then see if it pops up on their website. Like recently I was writing about Butterkost cheese. It's a German cheese that is popular in Wisconsin, but harder to find outside of Wisconsin. So I was doing some research and looked up like, hey, but Hy-Vee, Butterkost cheese, and then say, oh, there it is showing up on their webpage or the Instacart thing or so. Those, and those lists they're never comprehensive because I can't know every location too. But
right.
Kind of help give a guide to people saying, hey, if hit up some of the major spots, and people seem to like those kind of things because also those, I'm also informing people in those things too. So it's like then referring them to say, oh, check out these other content here. If you like this, check out this other thing out here. So you use it kind of as a point of like to send people other places he wants to kind of got the information. So yeah, those are really good posts. But like, for me, it's something that I can write more because I have the knowledge for that. Because I travel around enough. I'm such a grocery nerd that like, I go to all the grocery stores, so I know that. So that I'm kind of using like my unique take to be able to give people something that a lot of people probably wouldn't have the information for because, if they're not, as grocery nerdy as I am or as travel as much. So.
Grocery nerdy. I like that. So I'm coming up with this like subtitle for Eric. The go-to grocery nerd is perfect. But you have so much information. I am on your Apple email list, and you just know so much about apples. And there's so many other things that you have knowledge about. So it really is valuable. What about Roundup Posts? Do you do a lot of those? Like what to serve with posts?
I've just started kind of doing a little bit of that because I've been using RankIQ for the last... Probably, I think it's been over a year now for sure. Yeah, well over a year, I think. But so I've been using that, and that's been one of their suggested keywords. There's a lot of them that say what to serve with. So I'm kind of experimenting around with some of those posts because they also, I think too, they can also promote some of your recipe content. And here's an encouragement for people. I know, like other food bloggers. I know, like food bloggers, love. Some people may just love. They don't maybe like writing those sort of posts. They really love the recipe, which is great. And I love making recipe content too. It's fun to come with something new and people love, and when people love it, it's really awesome that you like, oh, I made something and they love this. So I know like a lot of people out there that might be like worried about like, oh, like, oh, I don't really like writing that kind of content here, and it's not really my passion. But I think too, like if you look at what to serve with posts, I think it's a way to just bring people in, and then you can share like those recipe posts. You can share like if you're if we're talking about let's stick on the ham thing we talked about. If you have a bunch of recipes that go well with ham, then you could share, if you're saying like what to serve with ham, you could share those type of like side dishes and things you have on your blog or dessert, so that you're bringing people in still. It's bringing traffic in, but you're not losing like your passion, like your recipes. You're not just like a band, because I think like it can be hard if you're not passionate about like writing those type of posts, that they just like, oh, I'm going to write in for traffic, which I think is good sometimes to write some stuff for traffic, but you don't want to like write things because you're going to get really burnt out. Like I did that before, where I found something that was working for traffic, and it just like, I didn't enjoy writing it. So I got burnt out on it eventually and didn't want to do it anymore. Mm-hmm. So like at that point, it wasn't worth it because it was rooting all my creative juices. It was like, I wasn't being effective, and I was like, I don't really want to write about this anymore. So I've at times had to pull back from that. So I figure like it's good to write for search engines, with some things here, but you don't want to lose your full passion by just pursuing that. You want to have a mix. I think like a what to serve type of post, like if you can do some of those and rank for those here, you're still getting a chance to share, like, and maybe your recipes are your baby and something that you love, passionate about. You're still kind of getting people funneled into those posts.
So sprinkle some of these in, but don't like dive into the deep end because you don't want to get burned out like Eric did. Yeah. And so where do people start with this? Do you recommend starting with a Roundup post? If somebody's listening and they're like, this sounds great, I want to dive into some more non-recipe content, but I don't know where to begin.
Yeah, I think a Roundup post can be good too. And it's also kind of fun to like on some of these posts I've done recently, like I haven't had all the recipes needed for it, like to really like pull it in. So I know asked our blue bloggers like you, I asked you for a couple recipes that I could use for some posts. So then it's kind of fun to bring other bloggers in and have that, just kind of, share the wealth and say, hey, it's someone else here. So I think like, starting with like a Roundup post, you might want to look at like what type of topic you're ranking for well enough here. So I think like sometimes you may end up finding too that, let's say you've written a lot of posts about corn, it's fresh corn season. So I got corn in my mind. So like if you're like, oh, I rank well, I have all these corn posts that rank well. So maybe you do like kind of a Roundup type post of like, best summer corn recipes or best things to use while fresh corn's in season or something along those lines. And then you share like some of those posts. You may find that like that post outranks the other ones. Like it's like it becomes your top corn post, but then you're still like pushing up everything else too. So, and you're still getting people, to click through and to see stuff. So I think like people who are coming to look for that information are going to probably be more likely to click through, because they're already looking for recipes. So I think like those are really, really good to write and don't really like, if you have the photos for it. So I think it's easy to start with something you have. And if you find like you have gaps, you could, reach out to other food bloggers. I mean, you definitely can make some other recipes too. If you find like, oh, I need I don't have a corn dessert recipe, which I have actually made corn ice cream before. So it can be, it can be made as a dessert. So
I have never heard of corn ice cream, but you need to make that. Oh, boy. So I'm just going to mention Rank IQ because this is how I started digging into non-recipe content. I was looking through their amazing keyword database and started seeing things that kind of related to my existing content. So like you were just saying, if I had corn recipes and I was looking through their keywords and found like what to serve with sweet corn, how to cook frozen corn on the cob, and I'm like, oh, I can link to that recipe and that recipe if I make this. So I started just thinking about the webs of content that I could create and interlink within my blog by creating non-recipe content. So Rank IQ really helped me to round that out. And it's been so good for my traffic. So I would say if you are on Rank IQ, just start like typing in those keywords that you're known for, or maybe that you're already getting existing traffic for, like Eric was saying, and then just see what pops up, because sometimes things will pop up that you never would have thought of, right, Eric? Like, oh, that's a keyword. I never would have thought to write about corn ice cream or, whatever pops up. So.
Yeah, I found that too. Recently I didn't think about writing. I was looking up, one of the keywords I was looking up shrimp. I think it was shrimp is where I started. And one of the keywords on there was like Kirkland air fried shrimp. So buying the like Costco Kirkland brand air fried shrimp and then air frying it. So I'm like, whoa. And I actually I found out I rank really well for Costco things. Like I have Costco guides to like different types of food. Like one of my top posts is a Costco beef guide, which is goes through and tells you what kind of cuts they do have at most Costco stores, and then I refer them back to other posts, and that one does really well. So I'm like, well, I already rank well for Costco here, so I'm going to then write the post. That the post is simply just me buying the frozen breaded panko fried shrimp at Costco, and then I just test it in the air fryer to figure like how long is it going to take me to cook it in the air fryer, and I published that recently, and it's a top 20 post over last month.
Wow.
I got a discovery too, so I got a little bit of like Google discovery. So I got a little kick of traffic for a little bit from that one. So that was one that I wouldn't have thought about writing. I'm like, well, this makes total sense. It was super easy to write, and it was just super awesome.
Yeah. Here's a little added tip that sometimes works for me. So if you create a non-recipe post, or really, I mean, like any content right now, and you want to give it a nice boost, create a web story at the same time. And even if it's a roundup. So I think this is why some of my roundups have really taken off, because we create roundup web stories, roundup posts, publish them around the same time, and they seem to really like boost each other. So that's another little tip you could consider.
Okay, definitely.
Okay, so we've talked about comparison, how-tos, roundup posts, where to buy, anything else, any other types of posts to consider?
Yeah. Other things I would look forward to doing too is like blog posts that are specifically related to the Q4 like holidays, like really focusing in on those type of things that come up during that like question type posts. Like that's what does really well for me is during that time period, because you got like one of my top posts during Thanksgiving is about, should my pumpkin pie be jiggly in the center when you're not cooking? Is like those type of posts do really well because you're kind of like addressing like an issue, and so like that one brings in quite a bit of traffic during that time period. So like those type of question posts, like I think work when you're kind of solving someone's conundrum, and that one itself, I think like those type of posts, like they don't like, I'm not expecting people to like stick around really with those ones, because you're probably like, you're worried about your pumpkin pie right now. You're probably going to like get your answer and get back to your oven or put it back in the oven or whatever you need to do at that point, whatever your stage your pies, I guess. So those, I'm not really counting on people to like stick around. Those have a high bounce rate. People, come there, they see it, and then they leave and get it. But still, like I have enough of those posts, and because RPM during Thanksgiving time and Christmas are very high, that you like it's still like worth it to like write those posts that like the rest of the year.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, they're still helping. They're solving a really dire pain point.
Yeah. So I'm sure people do come back after that still, may have remembered. It's like, oh, that was helpful. If my advice worked, of course they failed, they probably would never talk to me again. But like in normal circumstances, you would think that those would work. So those are big.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile to just sprinkle those in too, because why not? See if they take off. And then do you keep a close eye on Google Analytics just to see what's working, what's not, and then do you take what's working and make more of that?
Yes, that's typically what I do is keep an eye on what's going to work. And I'm regularly in my analytics, like all the time, like kind of mostly daily basis. I mean, not every day necessarily, but it depends. If things are going great, I'm in it all the time because I'm enjoying that. When things are not going good, I kind of want to avoid it a little bit. But yeah, it's always trying to like monitor like what's doing good and trying to replicate that more. I mean, sometimes you do that. No guarantee success that it's going to work. I mean, sometimes you'll think like, okay, well, this worked really well. Let's replicate this type of thing. And then they all just bomb. I mean, so you just don't know. You don't know sometimes if it, or maybe to figure out what worked with it. So sometimes you have to kind of like look through that and decide what's really what actually worked and what didn't. So yeah, I usually try to bounce things off. Or if I have a new idea about a new type of like, oh, I haven't written about this before. Like, I don't want to like, experiment out there, but not like go too crazy with it. Like I'd never written about olive oil before. So I did a couple olive oil posts and kind of like, let's see how these end up ranking and see if this is going to be a successful thing for me or not.
And how did it do? How'd the olive oil do?
I had some success. Surprisingly, like the post, it's weird sometimes. Like you think like, oh, this post is going to be the best. And then it's like, oh, it was actually this one. It's like my best post was like, with olive oil was using olive oil instead of butter to make a roux for like a sauce, like a cheese sauce or something here. And that one actually did well. It was like a substitute post, which there's another type of post you can do is different substitutes for things that work well. Some that like maybe like sometimes I substitute ingredients for because they're better and it produces a better end result than like a common recipe would, or sometimes it's an allergy thing, or I can't find this ingredient, or I'm in this part of the country and I can't find this ingredient. So I think those are another type of post you can do. It's like the kind of swaps, the substitutions. I think those are good ones.
Another idea is copycat recipes. I mean, that's more of a recipe post, but I'm just trying to think of like alternative, like original recipes. So that wouldn't like fall under non-recipe content, but that's another version that you could look into.
Exactly, yeah, and I think those are really good too. Like the copycat ones can be kind of fun if you're a recipe you know really well and people want to make it at home. I think those can be almost sometimes better than like our recipe posts, because I think like when you look at some recipe posts, like sometimes like we create stuff that's like out of our like creative genius. Like we're there's so many really intelligent, smart bloggers that come up with like amazing dishes, and you come up with like the most amazing thing. But sometimes those recipes can be hard to get traffic for because no one's looking for them. If I don't know what I'm trying to think of. I did like a sesame seed encrusted chicken where like I just like put tons of sesame seeds on it. And like, well, no one's looking up sesame encrusted chicken. Like, so like maybe sesame chicken by itself, but like my type of thing, people aren't really looking for that. So I think sometimes like, our ideas can be hard, to search find if they're things that people don't even, that they're gonna have to discover. That's the kind of thing you would have to like find in a cookbook. Like you throw a cookbook, you say like, oh, here's a cool recipe. I never thought about doing. Like there was a recipe I found in a cookbook once I really loved. It was putting fennel seeds and cornflakes as a breading for chicken and frying it. So like, but I would never have searched up like cornflakes and fennel seed for chicken. Unless I'm a food blogger that thinks I have a new idea. I had done those before where I thought like I had some unique idea, and I'm like, oh, that's already been done before. So yeah, I think sometimes I think like our creative genius could sometimes almost make it harder for us to come up with things because we're not sharing for at least for search traffic. I mean some of those things are more like those kind of recipes would be good for like Pinterest if Pinterest is still working for you. It's definitely not for me at all, but if Pinterest is still something that's you're on, those sort of recipes probably could do well in that. If you have like this really unique concept and cool looking photos and stuff here, that might work for those type of traffic. So yeah, if you're, so it doesn't mean like abandon those like really cool things, but if you're working on that, if you have a resource for that, it can work well.
So how much of this do you recommend food bloggers experimenting with? Like not totally replacing their recipe creation with this whole idea of creating non-recipe content, but how much should they dig in?
I think, they start, getting your feet wet a little bit, trying to experiment with, start with a couple posts and just kind of, see how things go, or a series of certain topics that you maybe want to do. Like recently I just did a bunch of cheese substitute posts of different types of cheese. And I did them all like in the same week because it was kind of easier to write similar type posts all at the same time because your mind's already in that kind of flow. So it could be good.
Yeah, I do the same.
To batch kind of like I batched a bunch of green bean posts at once. So doing that type of thing could be a good idea. But yeah, I think experimenting, kind of seeing what will work, because again, you have to be able to want to write them. If it's becoming too burdensome, if like you're just like, because you may just I like writing them, other people may hate writing them, and so you don't want to, you may want to like say, I'll sprinkle a couple in here. And try to see what works, but not like I wouldn't like abandon the entire ship to just start writing those all together. I would still mix in there and write what you love, but also write for Google. So I think there's a healthy balance between doing those things, because sometimes I will write a post because I just want to write this post, and so I don't want to just write for Google all the time either. And so, I want to, and sometimes those posts work out and sometimes they don't still, but I think it's so important to, you don't want to lose your passion for it. Because if that happens, then things just, then you'll just dread it. So I would say that.
We don't want that. Is there anything else you feel like we should mention on this topic before we start saying goodbye?
Well, let's see. Yeah. So I think it's just, it's okay to just explore different things here, and even if you find out like, it doesn't work, you can always not index the posts. If it finds out you don't work, like this whole thing doesn't work, you can, it's not permanent. That's the thing with blogs. You have to remember, like we're not writing anything in stone. Anything can be deleted, reworked. Sometimes recently a topic I've reworked is that I didn't really know was a topic is I had a couple of posts that I found out. I was looking through Google Search Console, which I recommend using that free tool to see what kind of words you're going to be ranking for, what people are actually coming for. Because I wrote a post about how long does popcorn last. So I was doing a popcorn series, so I was talking about that, and I then noticed I'm getting some traffic to this post here, but it's all coming from people who are looking about vacuum sealing popcorn. And I had briefly mentioned vacuum sealing within the post itself. So I realized that, okay, I need to take that. So I took that post, and now it's actually I rewrote it so it's actually focused on vacuum sealing popcorn. So it's is it a good idea to do that if you just want to save popcorn from going bad, your popcorn kernels, or I tested out what would happen if I pop some popcorn, sit in a bag for a week, and then open the bag up and taste it. Would it be good still? So I found different things. So now I'm on another post at the same thing. It was the vacuum sealing because it was a sous vide recipe. So I was getting the traffic from just people looking how to vacuum seal burger patties.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
so a lot of experimentation, really. I mean, a lot of just okay, this is working, start here, and then just see how it goes and just experiment as you go.
You should, part of your job as a food blogger should be you're also a scientist. You're experimenting.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great way to put it. You are doing experiments, but you're also a food blogger. Don't lose your focus on food, obviously, and get in the weeds too much.
So
but
now I just add another job to food blogging. So now we have photographer, writer, and now scientist.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.
You're
you
welcome.
Just give us no, this is a valuable new job that not a lot of people think about. It took me 10 and a half years to figure out that this was really valuable. And since I've figured this out, and you helped me get there, Eric, by the way, my blog traffic has taken off, and I've been around forever. So that's saying a lot. So thank you for all of your value. This was amazing, Eric. It was such a pleasure to learn from you today and to chat with you. And just thank you for being here.
My pleasure. I love talking with you.
Yes, same. Do you have either a favorite quote or words of inspiration to leave us with today?
I'm going to go with the kind of simple and maybe corny sometimes, but it's the never give up philosophy. Just never give up. Is to keep trying. If you're struggling with your blog, I had a lot of time where I felt like it was never going to work, or I even had people tell me that oh, you can't do this. This is not gonna not really a business. You can't make this into a business. You're just having doubts about it here, and it's all different life situations. You can't compare yourself to another person. It's best to compare yourself to yourself and try to improve on yourself instead of looking at others and their journeys and seeing how they go. You can be inspired by other people's journeys, but don't say well, they did. If you just someone, well, they made Mediavine in 1 year, and I've been doing it for 3 years, and I haven't yet. If in that kind of boat, I still say, just keep trying at it, and keep finding out what works, and the trial and error thing. You may find that you wrote on one topic, and Google said, I don't want to rank for you for some reason, and other topic could work out. So it's just a matter of keep trying. Just don't, if something you really want to do and really passionate about wanting to do, and make into, whatever, it's just extra money, or you want to make it a career, then just keep at it here and keep finding ways to try new things and to motivate yourself and be that scientist that experiments around with different things.
I think that's the theme of your journey, Eric, is just never giving up and just keep going, keep working with what you have. So I love that you ended that way. We will put together a show notes page for you, Eric. If anyone wants to go look at those, you can go to eatblogtalk.com/eat like no one. Tell everyone where they can find you, Eric, online, social media, and also mention your podcast that's coming soon.
So you can find me at eatlikenoone.com. On Instagram, it's eatlikeNoOneElse. Facebook, I'm not really doing much right now. So really the best way Instagram is to reach me on there. And yes, as Megan mentioned, I have a podcast that's getting ready to launch very soon. Maybe it'll be launched by the time this podcast is on air. We're looking for early August launch for it. It's called Eat, Shop, Waste Not. And in this podcast, I'm going to be basically reading my blog posts and putting them into an audio kind of format. So something that's really super easy and approachable. And then adding little tidbits at the end, little 30 seconds to 6 seconds extra content that's more focused on grocery shopping and helping people not to waste their money and waste their food. And so excited about getting that going. And I'll also have a chance to talk to some guests. We'll have some special interviews
I'm super excited for your podcast. I cannot wait. I'm going to be a listener. I'll listen in to every episode. So yeah, that's going to be a fun journey for you. And just thank you for being here, Eric. It was such a pleasure. And thank you for listening today, food bloggers. I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Eat Blog Talk. Please share this episode with a friend who would benefit from tuning in. I will see you next time.